This video is brought to you by the Corsair Virtuoso RGB wireless headset. Compatible with anything you play Final Fantasy XIV on, you can take your gaming and IRL glamour game to the next level with the beautiful new Pearl design. For uncompromised sound quality, visit Corsair.com today and use code MISTECH for 10% off. Hi everyone, welcome to the visual guide for Eden's Promise Eternity Savage Part 1. This is the 4th Savage raid made available by patch 5.4 in Final Fantasy XIV, Futures Rewritten. This video will show the first encounter before the checkpoint, where the team faces off against Eden's Promise. If you're looking for the Oracle of Darkness guide, please check out Part 2. My name is MISTECH and I'll be your raid guide. Before we look at the specific rotation of mechanics, let's break down some general concepts of this encounter. From normal mode, you'll remember that the boss will siphon memories from the primal crystals on the north side of the platform. Each primal has a very specific attack pattern, but on Savage, there is no telegraph outside of the siphon tether. These memories are also siphoned in pairs, meaning their respective attacks are overlapped. Let's look at the possibilities here. Ramuh's attack is a large point-blank circle around the boss. Players will need to move out of melee to avoid this. Garuda's attack is 4 cones out of the direct back, front, and sides of the boss. Players will need to move into the intercardinals to avoid this. Leviathan's attack will cover the east and west edge of the platform with waves, rendering only the middle third of the platform through the boss safe. Ifrit's attack consists of 2 massive conflag cleaves directly in front and behind the boss, leaving very small safe spots on either side of the boss. Again, these attacks will overlap, and players will need to quickly recognize the available safe spots based on the 2 sets of memories that are siphoned by the boss. When she casts Cast, these 2 attacks will go off right away. When she casts Stalk, the 2 attacks will only go off when she eventually casts Release, so players will have to remember what she siphoned and be ready to react appropriately. On Savage, the boss can also junction primals. This can only happen with Titan or Shiva and essentially adds a stack or spread component to their next few casts or gives them access to specific Shiva or Titan mechanics. If she junctions Titan, players can expect to split into 2 groups and stack after specific mechanics to share the damage of Under the Weight, which will target each healer for high damage. If she junctions Shiva, players will need to be ready to spread to assigned positions to avoid overlapping Frigid Stone AoE attacks that will target every player after specific attacks. Now that we have some of the basic concepts under our belt, let's take a look at the actual encounter. We begin with Obliteration, which will deal very high raid-wide damage. Mitigate, Shield, and Heal. Immediately after, Primal Memories will crystallize on the north edge of the platform. The boss will then cast either Junction Titan or Junction Shiva, and players can be ready to either stack or spread for the next round of mechanics. Rapturous Reach will target one side of the platform for a wider than 180-degree attack. Players will need to be far in the opposite side to avoid getting hit. Immediately after, players will need to stack or spread depending on which junction she started with. If she Junction Titan, make sure you stack in your split groups. If she Junction Shiva, all players will need to spread apart to avoid overlap. Next, Cast will siphon primal memories from 2 of the crystals. Players will need to quickly identify which 2 primals are attacking and move into the appropriate safe spots to dodge the overlapping attacks. Immediately after, they'll need to spread or stack again based on that original junction. Once all of these mechanics resolve, the boss will lose her junction. Next up, Formless Judgment will target the 2 highest enmity targets for some very heavy-hitting tank busters. There are 2 hits on each tank, each one afflicting them with either piercing resist or slashing resist down debuffs based on their enmity. Since one tank can't handle 2 of the same attacks without an immunity, we tank swap during the cast so that each tank takes 1 of each hit. Heavy cooldowns are still required here, so make sure to mitigate appropriately and healers be ready with those heals. There will be 1 more Obliteration AoE blast to heal through, followed by Junction Shiva. With this junction, the boss will be able to cast Shiva-specific abilities. She begins with Diamond Dust, which will deal high raid-wide damage, turn the platform to ice, and spawn large AoE circles around the platform with only 2 available safe spots at the outer edges. Immediately after, the 2 healers will be targeted by stack-up markers. To handle all of this, the group will need to again split and slide to their assigned safe spot to stack with their healer and share the incoming damage. The first set of AoE circles around the room will explode at the same time that the healer's markers do, and 2 more AoE circles will form in the areas of the original safe spots. All players will also be targeted by these circle attacks that must be spread. To handle this, all players can slide out of the big AoE circles to specific spread spots around the boss. The second set of explosions will occur at the same time that the circle AoEs resolve on each player. These player AoEs will drop down ice pillars that will then tether to a player with a proximity-based damage tether. The boss will then add more AoE circles around the platform with only 2 safe spots, while also casting a radial knockback. To handle this combo, players will first want to identify which ice pillar they're tethered to, and then move into one of the 2 available safe spots to dodge the first set of explosions. Once those go off, they could run back to the boss and use the knockback to get pushed away from their ice pillar, all while ensuring they do not get knocked into the second round round of explosions. Players will want to be far enough away from their ice pillars that their tethers turn purple, indicating that they are far enough away to survive the damage. Each pillar will then shoot out across the platform towards their tethered player before disappearing. As long as players aren't overlapping and they're far enough away, the damage is not lethal. Move back in for heals and the boss will lose her Shiva Junction. Another obliteration cast to shield and heal through. Don't forget those necessary raid cooldowns too. Next up, she will Junction Titan, giving her access to Titan specific abilities. She'll begin with Earthen Fury, a massive raid-wide damage blast. Make sure you mitigate and heal through this damage. During this mini phase, players should take note of the circle segments on the platform. Bomb boulders will then spawn all around the platform and players will be marked up with some familiar Titan markers. To refresh, the blue triangle marker will target the circle segment the player is standing on and any adjacent circle segments. The yellow triangle marker will only target the circle segment directly under the player and should not be overlapped. The orange square marker will only target the circle segment directly under the affected player but must be shared with at least one other person to survive. In this first round, one player will be marked with the blue marker, 3 players will be marked with the yellow markers, and the rest will have orange markers. Furthermore, each bomb boulder will need to be destroyed appropriately by the marker explosions or they will explode, dealing high damage and debuffing the raid. With these basic ground rules, we can now look at how to resolve each round of bomb boulders and markers. In the first round, we have the 3 yellow players move to the north, west, and east segments, while the orange markers split up to take the northwest and northeast segments. The blue marker will go directly south so that their marker affects the south, southeast, southwest, and middle segments. Once the markers resolve, players can quickly move into the center to help the healers top them off before the next round. This time, 2 blue markers will appear, while everyone else has orange. The 2 blue markers will go directly east and west, while the orange markers will split to north and south. Move in for heals again in between, and get ready for the final round. In this round, there are 2 blue markers, 2 yellow markers, and 4 orange. 1 blue marker will go to the southwest, while the other runs to the southeast segment. All oranges will go directly north, while the 2 yellow markers split up and take northwest and northeast. After the third round, the boss will lose her Titan Junction and the platform will return to normal. Another obliteration to heal through, and then the boss will summon a massive guardian on the south side of the platform that will begin to cast its own version of obliteration, a long line attack that players must share the damage of. The boss will then cast, siphoning from 2 of the primals. Players must quickly identify the safe spots and stack together not only to avoid the primal attack, but to share the damage of the guardian's obliteration laser. This is followed by another obliteration blast from the boss. Again, there is a ton of raid-wide damage happening here, so healers beware. At this point, we have the tank pull the boss to the south side of the platform. This isn't necessary, but we found it helped us pay attention to the guardian a lot easier. At this point, the boss will cast stalk, and players will need to identify the safe spots and keep them in mind for later. Next up, both healers will be targeted for stack-up markers. We have the group split up again to share both hits, one in front of the boss and one directly behind. Immediately after, 2 chiseled sculptures will drop down where these hits were soaked. Each statue will tether to 4 players and mark them up with the numbers 1 through 4. The boss will cast Rupturous Reach on one side, and then the sculptures will begin to blast each player in order with large laser attacks that deal damage and apply a light resist down debuff when hit. To handle this, the players must quickly identify what number they are and to which sculpture they are tethered to. They'll need to position themselves to angle the laser beam away from the rest of the raid, who will be waiting in between the statues for their turn to get blasted. As soon as their laser beam goes off, the number 2 players will move into position to take the second beam, and so on until all 4 beams go off. While this is happening, the Guardian is beginning to cast Palm of Temperance, a massive knockback from the side of the glowing hand in either the southeast or southwest. This knockback will go off immediately after the 4th laser beams blast off from the statues, so all players need to be ready to use a knockback immunity or position themselves on the glowing hand side to avoid getting knocked off the platform. Around this time, the boss will also jump back into the center and begin to cast Release. Whatever 2 memories she stocked before the sculptures came down will be cast here, and players will need to immediately move into the available safe zones after the knockback to avoid getting hit. All of this is followed by another obliteration blast to heal through and another round of tank busters. Don't forget to cooldown, shield, and heal through these as necessary. The boss will again cast Stalk, and all players should store in their memories which 2 attacks are going to overlap soon. 6 beastly sculptures will spawn around the room, a big lion in the north, a big lion in the south, and 4 smaller lions from the sides of the platform. The small lions will tether to either all damage dealers or all tanks and healers, while the other 4 players are left untethered. The big lions will breathe on players closest to them, leaving behind fire puddles with each attack. The small lions will breathe in the direction of their tethered players. Each fire breath will deal damage and place fire resist down debuffs on anyone hit. As such, every single fire breath needs to be baited in such a way that they only hit 1 player at a time. This is being handled while the boss and guardian are casting mechanics. Obviously, this is a lot to process all at once, so let's break it down. As soon as the lions appear, the tethers will go out and players will know what responsibility they each have. Non-tethered players will be handling the big lion breaths, while the tethered players will handle the lion they are currently tethered to. The boss will cast Rapturous Reach, and all players will first need to move into the safe side to avoid this. Tethered small lion players will need to move into assigned spots on the opposite diagonal to their lion spawn to handle their first breath, while the first two players assigned to the big lions will stand on their lions to point their breath outwards and plop the first fire puddle underneath the lion. Untethered players assigned to the second big lion breaths have nothing to do at the time, so they can wait in the safe zones formed by the north and south sides of the boss. The next two players assigned to bait the big lions will now move to do so on one of their sides, while the first set of players can move into the big lion safe spots. The tethered players will chill in their assigned spots for now. While this is happening, the Guardian is casting Laser Eye, a massive radial knockback from the center. I highly recommend everyone use a knockback immunity during this time, so that their positioning for each lion breath is not compromised. Immediately after the knockback resolves, another set of breaths will go out from each lion while the boss begins to cast Release. As soon as the breaths go off, all players can quickly adjust into the appropriate safe zones based on the incoming overlapping primal memory she stocked before. As soon as this primal memory resolves, the tethered players will move back into their assigned spots across and diagonally from their lions, while the first set of big lion baiters will move close to the big lions to bait another breath on the other side. The second set of big lion baiters will stand in the big lion safe zones to dodge all of the breaths. The boss will cast another Rapturous Reach, and every single player will need to immediately move to the safe side to avoid this. At this point, the lions and fire puddles will disappear. Another Obliteration cast to heal through, followed by another stock cast. Pay attention to which two memories are being stocked and save the thought for later. Next, she'll junction either Shiva or Titan, and players will need to be ready to spread or stack appropriately after the next cast. Quickly identify which two memories are being cast, find the appropriate safe spot to dodge it, and then spread or stack depending on her junction. She'll immediately lose her junction here and cast another Obliteration. Be ready with those heals. Next up, another junction Titan or Shiva, the other of what she just junctioned. At this point, Release will be cast and players will need to find the appropriate safe zones and then immediately stack or spread based on the junction. Again, she'll lose her junction and then cast another round of Tank Busters. You'll have two more Obliterations to heal through before she becomes invulnerable and casts her final Enrage. If you push her down before this time, she'll cast a knockback, a cutscene will play, and you will reach the checkpoint, allowing you to progress to the next boss. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Up next, we're looking at part 2 of this encounter, where the raid faces off against the Oracle of Darkness. As always, thanks for watching. Till next time.